The radio had been dead for 11 minutes. Chief Petty Officer Garrett Kane pressed his back against the collapsed stone wall and counted his men. 11, including himself. 3 were bleeding. 1, his best breacher, a kid from Montana who just turned 24, was unconscious, his face the color of wet cement. "How many rounds we got left?" Garrett asked. His second in command, a petty officer named Santos, didn't look up from the tourniquet he was tying around his own thigh. "Maybe 4 mags between all of us. 5 if you count the pistol rounds." "And them?" Santos finally looked up. His eyes said everything his mouth didn't want to. 180, maybe 200, coming from 3 sides. "Chief, they've got us boxed." Garrett closed his eyes. He had a daughter, 6 weeks old, born while he was on a transport plane somewhere over the Atlantic. His wife had texted him a photo, a tiny pink face wrapped in a white blanket. He'd saved it to his phone. He'd never held that baby. He was starting to accept that he never would. "Get on that radio again," he said. "Try every frequency." "Chief, I've been trying for..." "Try again." Santos grabbed the handset. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking so hard the antenna rattled against the stone. Any station. This is Dagger 6 actual. We are pinned at grid reference." Nothing. Static. Wind howling through the valley like something alive. Something hungry. Above them, 9,800 feet up on a ridge that didn't exist on any map, a 20-year-old woman lay flat on a rock shelf, barely wide enough for her body. Ice had formed on her eyelashes. Her lips were split and bleeding. She'd wrapped strips of torn cloth around her fingers to keep them from freezing to the rifle's metal. Her name was Kira Vale. She'd been in position for 6 hours already, tracking movement through the valley below. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her original tasking had been overwatch for a different operation, 12 kilometers east. But she'd heard the chatter. She'd heard the panic in the voices of men who never panicked. And she'd made a decision that nobody had authorized. She'd moved 3 hours across frozen terrain in the dark, navigating by memory and starlight, hauling her M110 and 60 rounds of ammunition up a mountain that would have challenged a fresh climber in daylight. She'd done it exhausted, dehydrated, running on nothing but training and something deeper, something that didn't have a name. Now she lay on that ridge and watched through her scope as nearly 200 Taliban fighters closed on 11 Americans who had no idea she existed. Garrett tried the radio one more time. His voice had changed. The command tone was gone. This was a man making peace with what was coming. "Any station. This is Dagger 6 actual. We are pinned. 3 casualties. Estimate 180 to 200 enemy fighters closing from 3 sides. No air support, no QRF available." He paused, swallowed. "We are going to die down here." He released the transmit button, looked at his men. Some were praying. One was writing something in a small notebook. A letter, probably. Last words for someone back home. Then the radio crackled. "Dagger 6, this is Wraith." Garrett grabbed the handset so fast he nearly dropped it. "Say again, who is this?" "Wraith, Overwatch. I have eyes on your position." The voice was calm, not the forced calm of someone trying to sound brave. The genuine calm of still water, and it was unmistakably female. Santos looked at Garrett. Garrett looked at Santos. Neither of them spoke. "Count your souls, Dagger 6, the voice continued. "Wraith, whoever you are, we have no Overwatch asset assigned to this operation. Identify yourself." "You do now. I count 11 souls. 3 wounded, 1 critical, 6 enemy positions preparing to advance on your east flank. 2 more staging to your south. You have approximately 18 minutes before they're on top of you." Garrett's mind raced. This wasn't in the plan. There was no sniper support for this mission. They were supposed to have air coverage, but the weather had grounded everything. "Wraith, I need your chief." The voice cut through his words like a blade through paper. Still calm, still gentle, but absolute. Stay low, stay quiet. I'll handle this. Garrett opened his mouth to respond, to demand identification, to follow protocol, to do any of the 100 things his training told him to do. Instead, he said, "Copy, Wraith, we're staying low." He didn't know why. Something in that voice, something that made him believe. 1,400 meters above the valley floor, Kira settled her cheek against the stock of her rifle. Through the scope, she'd been watching one figure for 90 seconds. Taller than the others, dark clothing, moving with authority, pointing, directing, sending groups of fighters forward in coordinated waves. The field commander. She ran the math, not on paper, not on a device. In her head, the way her father had taught her on a ranch in Wyoming when she was 9 years old. Numbers don't lie, Kira. Wind lies. Your eyes lie. Your gut lies. But the math never lies. Range, 1,280 meters. Wind, crosswind, gusting 15 to 22 miles per hour. Temperature, -4 Celsius. Altitude, 9,800 feet. Thin air, less drag. Bullet flies flatter but drops differently. She made the adjustments, not consciously. The way a concert pianist doesn't consciously think about which finger hits which key. 12,000 hours behind a scope had turned calculation into instinct. Breath in, long, slow, filling the lungs completely. Breath out, controlled release, not forced. Letting the air leave naturally. And then the pause. The sacred space between exhale and inhale, where the human body is perfectly still. No heartbeat disruption, no respiratory movement. A fraction of a second where shooter and rifle become a single system. Her finger pressed the trigger. Not pulled, not squeezed, pressed. Constant, even pressure, so gradual that the shot's break was a surprise, even to her. The rifle cracked. 1,280 meters away, the Taliban field commander dropped mid-gesture. His arms were still raised, still pointing, when his body simply ceased to function. The men around him froze, then scattered, spinning, searching, screaming into their radios. They couldn't find the shooter. The distance was too great. The sound had echoed off 3 different cliff faces, making the shot's origin impossible to determine. To them, it was as if God himself had reached down and removed their leader. Kira was already on the next target. 7 years later, Black Ridge Proving Grounds, Nevada Desert, 112 degrees in the shade. The parking lot was full of trucks, F-250s, Silverados, Rams, all of them newer models, all of them clean. Expensive rifle cases visible through rear windows, custom paint jobs, unit decals, the vehicles of men who'd earned the right to be here and wanted everyone to know it. At the far end of the lot, a 2008 Silverado pulled in. Faded blue paint, rust spots on the wheel wells, a crack in the windshield that hadn't been fixed because windshields cost money and bullets cost more. The engine shut off. The door opened. A woman stepped out. 5'6", maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. Brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Gray-blue eyes that didn't look at anything directly but seemed to see everything. She wore standard Army combat uniform. No name tape visible. No rank insignia that anyone would recognize as significant. Just 3 chevrons on her sleeve. Sergeant, E5, middle of the pack. She walked to the truck bed, pulled out a soft rifle case. $45 at Cabela's, fraying at one corner. The zipper pull replaced with a twist of paracord. Inside the registration building, a staff sergeant with a clipboard glanced at her name tape, then at her rank insignia, then at the soft case. "Firing position 19, Sergeant," he said, handing her a lane assignment card. "Thank you." She took the card and walked. Behind her, the staff sergeant leaned toward the range safety officer next to him. "Army sent a sergeant with a soft case. You believe that?" The range safety officer laughed. Short, sharp, disbelieving. She signed up for Dragon Spine too. This'll be entertaining. Kira heard none of it, or maybe she heard all of it and simply didn't care. Either way, her pace never changed. Steady, unhurried. The walk of someone who had stopped needing other people's approval a very long time ago. She reached position 19 and set down her gear, unzipped the soft case. The rifle that emerged was an M110 SASS, standard issue, government property, the kind of weapon that every shooter on this range had trained on at some point and then upgraded away from as fast as humanly possible. She began her ritual. Oil the bolt, check the extractor spring, inspect the firing pin, run a bore snake through the barrel. Every movement precise, flowing, automatic. The economy of motion that separates someone who maintains a weapon from someone who lives inside one. Then she tied the paracord to her barrel, 6 inches of faded green cord, knotted at one end, left to flutter in whatever breeze passed through. An improvised wind indicator, old school, almost ancient. 40 feet away, a man saw it. Master Sergeant Nash Brennan, United States Marine Corps, 6'3", 230 pounds, 40 years old, 3 deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, the kind of physical presence that made rooms feel smaller when he walked in. His rifle sat on a custom shooting mat embroidered with his name and unit crest. $28,000 of precision engineering, surgeon action, Bartline barrel, Night Force attacker optics, the kind of weapon that belonged in a museum display with a velvet rope around it. 8 shooters surrounded him, Rangers, Green Berets, a couple of Delta operators. They were laughing at something Nash had said, something about a failed qualification at Camp Pendleton, and the sound carried across the firing line the way it always did around Nash. Loud, confident, contagious. Then Nash's gaze drifted toward position 19. He saw Kira, saw the M110, saw the soft case lying open on the ground like a gutted fish. His face lit up. "Hey boys, check position 19. The group turned. 8 pairs of eyes found Kira, assessed her in under 2 seconds, reached the same conclusion. Army sent somebody's kid's sister with a pawnshop rifle, Nash said. The laughter came easy. The laughter of men who sat at the top of a very tall mountain and had never been given a reason to look up. That M110 couldn't reach the last 3 targets on this course if you threw it, a ranger added. Maybe she's here for the gift shop, another one said. Nash grinned, took 3 steps toward Kira. His entourage followed. A procession of the confident approaching the condemned. "Hey, sweetheart," his voice carried across the firing line. Deep Texas drawl. Not the warm kind, the kind that put you in your place and dared you to climb back out. Kira's hands paused on the rifle. 1 second, then resumed. She didn't look up. "You know this isn't a flat-range qual, right? This is big boy distance. Your little pea shooter's gonna run out of gas before target 4. Nothing. No reaction. No acknowledgement. Her hands moved across the rifle with the same unhurried precision, as though Nash Brennan and his audience existed in a different dimension entirely. The silence bothered Nash. He was a performer. He needed the reaction, needed the flinch, the anger, the embarrassment, something to play to his crowd. "I'm serious, darling. Drop the toy. Save yourself the embarrassment. Maybe one of the range staff has an admin slot." "Master Sergeant?" The voice came from behind Nash, low, controlled. Nash turned. A man stood 10 feet back, Navy uniform, Chief Petty Officer rank, SEAL trident on his chest, 38 years old, silver starting to show in his dark hair. Lines around his eyes that didn't come from smiling. Garrett Kane. "Maybe let her shoot," Garrett said. Nash sized him up, the way operators size each other up. Rank, unit, patches, posture. SEAL Team 3, Chief Petty Officer. Respected, but not senior enough to tell a Marine Master Sergeant what to do. Just having some fun, Chief. Relax. She didn't come here for your fun. Nash held Garrett's gaze for 3 seconds, then smiled, the wide, easy smile of a man who decides a fight isn't worth his time. Fair enough. He turned back to Kira. No offense, sweetheart, just looking out for you. He walked away. His audience followed. The show was over. Kira was forgotten. But Nash's smile had faded by the time he reached his mat. Something about the look in Garrett Kane's eyes bothered him. Not anger, not challenge, something else. Something that looked almost like warning. At position 19, Kira picked up a torque wrench and began checking her scope ring tension. 18 inch-pounds on the base, 65 on the rings. Her expression hadn't changed once during the entire encounter. Not because she was hiding her feelings, because there were no feelings to hide. The noise hadn't reached her. It never did. She'd learned that at 16 years old. Standing on a 600-yard line in Wyoming, while boys twice her size laughed at her father's second-hand bolt-action .308. She'd outshot every single one of them that day, and the day after, and every day since. Laughter was just wind, and Kira Vale had been reading wind her whole life. 500 yards from the firing line, in the observation tower, an old man lowered his spotting scope and pressed his lips into a thin, hard line. He'd seen the whole thing. Nash's performance, Kira's silence, Garrett's intervention. August Holloway was 68 years old, weathered face that looked like it had been carved from the same rock as the mountains behind him. White hair, military cut, scar running from his left temple to his jaw, a gift from a Taliban knife in 1972. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, flannel shirt, hiking boots, no uniform, no rank, no identifier that would tell anyone he'd spent 42 years teaching people how to take life from distances most men couldn't imagine. He'd been watching Kira since she'd pulled into the parking lot in that beat-up Silverado, watched her park away from the crowd, watched her walk alone to position 19, watched her begin her ritual with a quiet professionalism that 90% of the operators below would never understand. He remembered a girl, 5 years ago, 22 years old, showing up at his cabin in the Wyoming mountains, thin, angry, broken, fresh out of the Army with a discharge that wasn't quite honorable and wasn't quite dishonorable. The kind of discharge they gave you when you did something extraordinary that you weren't supposed to do. She'd found him after 3 days of searching, knocked on his door at 6 in the morning, didn't wait to be invited in. "Mr. Holloway, my father said you were the best. Teach me." He'd looked at her, seen the shadows under her eyes, the weight loss, the tremor in her hands that she was trying to hide. "I don't teach anymore. They kicked me out." "Good. I don't want their rules. I want the truth." He'd tried to send her away. She'd come back the next day, and the next, and the next, for 6 months, every single day, until finally he'd opened the door and said, "You know what it costs? I already paid it once. I can pay it again." He'd trained her for 5 years, not the way the Army trained, not the way the Marines trained, the way his father had trained him in 1968 before shipping out to Quezon. The old way, the hard way, the way that turns shooting into something closer to meditation than violence. Now he raised the scope again, watched Kira finish her preparations with the same meticulous care she'd apply if she were entirely alone on the range. He allowed himself a small, tight smile. Nash Brennan had just made a very public mistake. He didn't know it yet, but he would. Before this day was over, every man on that range would know it. The PA system crackled. "All shooters, listen up. Final event, Dragon Spine. Report to the main firing line for briefing in 5 minutes. I say again, 5 minutes." Everything shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Men straightened. Hands tightened on rifle cases. Dragon Spine wasn't just another stage in the competition. It was the reason most of them had come. The test that created legends or destroyed reputations. The range master stepped onto a raised platform. Retired Command Sergeant Major. Face like cracked leather. Voice like someone had lined his throat with gravel and lit it on fire. Listen close because I'm only saying this once. Dragon's spine. 8 targets. Ranges from 750 meters to 3,200 meters. He let that last number sit. Engage in sequence. 12-minute time window from first shot. Wind in this valley is a living nightmare. Variable 8 to 22 miles per hour. Direction shifts with thermal cycles every 90 seconds. He looked out at the crowd, 220 faces staring back. If your rifle can't reach 3,200 meters, withdraw now. No shame. 11 shooters stepped back immediately. Their calibers couldn't make the distance. They knew it. Better to bow out with dignity than to fail publicly. Targets 1 through 7. Steel plates, 10 to 16 inches, partially obscured by terrain features. Target 8, 3,200 meters. That's 2,100 yards, 1.3 miles. Dead silence. 209 shooters doing the same math in their heads. A 10-inch plate. At that range, in these conditions, you're asking your rifle and your ammunition to do things that physics barely permits. Bullet drop will be in the neighborhood of 700 inches. That's 58 feet. Wind drift could exceed 24 inches. Earth rotation becomes a factor. He paused, looked at them the way a priest looks at a congregation before delivering bad news. This is not a competition. This is a test of whether you can deliver when everything says you can't. Nash Brennan signed up first. Bold letters, confident hand. He turned to his audience. This is why you bring a real cannon, boys. Kira stepped forward next. The crowd parted, not out of respect, out of curiosity. The way people step back from someone walking toward the edge of a cliff. She picked up the pen, wrote in small, precise handwriting, SGTK, Vale, USA. Set the pen down, walked back to position 19. 3 seconds of silence. Then Nash laughed, loud. But the edges of it were ragged now, something he couldn't quite control. Spirit. She's got spirit. I'll give her that. She's gonna embarrass herself, a ranger said. She already has, said another. But Garrett Kane, standing at the back of the crowd with his arms crossed, wasn't laughing. He was watching Kira walk away, watching the set of her shoulders, the rhythm of her stride, and the memory that had been fighting to surface all morning finally broke through. 7 years ago, Kunar Province, the worst night of his life. Crouched behind a stone wall with 10 men who were running out of ammunition and hope. The radio crackling to life. A voice, stay low, stay quiet, I'll handle this. Calm, steady, female. Garrett's hands went cold. His coffee slipped and hit the ground. He didn't notice. He stared at Kira Vale, at the M110 on its bipod, at the paracord fluttering on the barrel, at the notebook filled with wind data collected across a lifetime of shooting in conditions that would break most men. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his teeth. No, he whispered, no way. But even as he said it, his body was already responding to what his mind hadn't fully accepted. His hands were shaking. His eyes were burning. 7 years of searching. 7 years of dead ends and classified walls and being told to drop it. 7 years of carrying a debt he couldn't repay because he didn't know who to pay it to. He walked to his firing position, sat down, picked up his rifle, the Chi-Tac M200 intervention, chambered in .408, ran his fingers along the stock. Then he opened his own notebook, flipped to a page he'd written 7 years ago, a page he'd never shown anyone. At the top, in his own handwriting, Wraith, unknown female sniper, Kunar, 2019, 72 hours, 11 confirmed, 11 lives. Below it, a list of characteristics he'd compiled from memory, from the radio calls, from the impossible shots he tracked from the valley floor. Uses M110 platform. Reads wind without instruments. Paracord indicator. Old school. Carries handwritten data notebooks. Calm voice. Young. American. Extraordinary range estimation. Extraordinary windage calculation. Works alone. Disappears without trace. He looked up from the notebook, looked at position 19, at Kira Vale, who was checking her rifle one final time with hands that moved like they'd been doing this since the beginning of time. Every single item on his list was staring him in the face. Garrett closed the notebook. His jaw tightened until the muscles ached. "It's you," he said, so quietly that not even the man sitting next to him could hear. "My God, it's you." Nash Brennan's name was called first for Dragon Spine. He went prone behind his $28,000 rifle with the ease of a man who'd done this 10,000 times. His spotter settled beside him. Kestrel meter deployed. Wind readings flowing. "Shooter ready?" "Ready." "Commence firing." Target 1. 750 meters. Boom. Hit. Target 2. 950. Boom. Hit. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, each one falling in sequence. Nash moved with fluid precision, fast, confident, undeniably good. The crowd watched with genuine admiration. Whatever else Nash Brennan was, arrogant, loud, condescending, the man could shoot. 7 for 7, 3 minutes 40 remaining, target 8, 3,200 meters, the impossible distance. Nash settled in. His spotter worked the Kestrel. Wind variable, 14, quartering right. Weight, gust to 19, shifting back to 11. Nash dialed, held, breathed, squeezed. Boom. The 408 Shitac sent a shockwave across the firing line. Dust erupted 4 feet left of the target. Miss. Nash cursed under his breath. Adjusted. Fired again. High and right. Miss again. Third attempt. Low and left. Miss. The timer beeped. 12 minutes expired. Nash stood. His jaw was tight. His eyes were flat. But he forced the grin. The performer's grin. The one that said nothing bothered him, even when everything did. "Wins a witch today, boys. 3,200 in these thermals. That's a coin flip." The crowd nodded, understanding. 7 of 8 was impressive. Nobody could fight the wind. Over the next 2 hours, 14 more shooters tried Dragon Spine. The best score, 7 of 8, achieved 3 times. Nobody hit target 8, not once, not even close. The shooters started calling it the ghost target. 3,200 meters, 1.3 miles, a 10-inch plate shimmering in heat mirage, untouchable, impossible, a mountain that couldn't be climbed. Then the range master's voice cut through the heat. "Next shooter, Sergeant Vale." The crowd didn't leave. Every single one of them stayed. Not because they expected success, because they expected failure. And failure, especially spectacular failure, was the best show on the range. Kira walked to the line, knelt, unpacked her M110, went prone. Her body settled into position the way water finds a channel. No forcing, no adjustment, just arrival. She closed her eyes. 3 seconds. When she opened them, every trace of the world outside the rifle had ceased to exist. "Shooter ready?" "Ready." "Commence firing." Target 1, 750 meters. She watched the mirage through the scope, read the heat waves, waited for the pattern. Her finger pressed. Constant. Even. Until the shot broke on its own. Crack. Ping. Hit. Target 2, 950. Crack. Ping. Hit. Target 3, 1100. Crack. Ping. Hit. She didn't pause between shots. The M110's semi-automatic action gave her a rhythm that bolt-action shooters couldn't touch. Each shot flowed into the next like notes in a melody written before she was born. Target 4, 1300. Crack. Ping. Hit. Target 5, 1450. Crack. Ping. Hit. The crowd had stopped talking. Target 6, 1600. Crack. Ping. Hit. Target 7, 1800. Crack. Ping. Hit. 7 for 7. Flawless. Faster than Nash. Faster than anyone who'd shot that day. Time remaining, 4 minutes, 52 seconds. Nash Brennan's face had gone the color of old cement. The crowd was locked in now, leaning forward, holding breath they didn't realize they were holding. Target 8, 3,200 meters. The ghost target. 1.3 miles. A 10-inch plate dancing in heat mirage like a hallucination. Kiera stared through the scope. She already knew the math. 762 NATO at 3,200 meters. The bullet would go transonic at 1,700. It would lose stability, begin to tumble, become unpredictable. Her rifle could not make this shot. The physics were as clear and final as gravity. She fired anyway. Crack. Dust erupted 8 feet right of the target. A ranging shot, information gathering. She adjusted, fired. Closer. 5 feet left. Again. 4 feet right. The bullet was tumbling now. A coin spinning through the air. Time remaining, 1 minute, 10 seconds. The crowd murmured. Sympathetic, respectful, but sympathetic. She was trying. It was admirable. But the rifle simply could not do what she was asking it to do. Then Kiera heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming straight toward her. She didn't turn. Didn't need to. She felt the weight of them through the ground. The crowd parted. Garrett Kane walked through the gap. His face was pale beneath the desert sunburn. In his hands, he carried his rifle. The Chi-Tac M200 intervention, chambered in .408. He knelt beside her, set the rifle on her mat, deployed the bipod. Then he reached into his vest pocket and produced a single brass cartridge. Hand-loaded, match-grade, the best round that knowledge and skill could produce. He placed it beside the rifle. 209 shooters watched in complete silence. Garrett's voice came out rough, broken at the edges, barely above a whisper. Try mine, Sergeant Major. The words hit the crowd like a bomb detonating in a church. Sergeant Major. She was wearing 3 chevrons. E5, a sergeant. But this SEAL, this chief petty officer who'd served 14 years in the most elite unit in the Navy, had just called her Sergeant Major. E9, the highest enlisted rank in the United States Army. Nash Brennan took one step back. His face had gone white beneath the sunburn. Kiera looked up from the rifle. Her eyes met Garrett's. And in that space, that fraction of a second where two people recognize each other across years and distance and classified walls and unanswered prayers, something cracked open that neither of them could close. I've been looking for you for 7 years, Garrett said, his voice barely held together. Wraith. Kira's hands went still on the rifle. For the first time all day, for the first time anyone on this range had seen, something moved behind her eyes. A wall shifted. A door opened. Just a crack. She gave one small nod. Garrett stood, stepped back, crossed his arms. Tears were running freely down his face, and he made no move to stop them. Time remaining, 48 seconds. Kira's hands moved to the Chi-Tac M200, a rifle she had never touched in her life. But her fingers found the bolt, the safety, the trigger guard, found them the way a pianist's hands find keys on a stranger's piano. Muscle memory doesn't care about the instrument. Mastery transcends the tool. She chambered the single round. The bolt closed with a sound like a whispered prayer. She settled behind the scope. 3,200 meters, the ghost target. the mountain that could not be climbed. 48 seconds, one bullet, and every man on that range holding his breath like his life depended on it. 48 seconds, one bullet, 3,200 meters of scorching air between Kira Vale and a 10-inch steel plate that no one on this range had been able to touch. Her cheek pressed against the stock of a rifle she'd never fired. The scope picture was different from her M110. Sharper, more magnification. The reticle hash marks spaced for a cartridge with twice the reach of her own. A stranger's instrument. But the fundamentals were the same. They were always the same. Breathe, calculate, press. She ran the math. .408 Chi-Tac. Muzzle velocity, 2,950 feet per second. Ballistic coefficient of the hand-loaded bullet, .720. Elevation required, 61 minutes of angle. Bullet drop at 3,200 meters, 680 inches, 56 feet. The bullet would arc 90 feet above the line of sight at its apex, then fall like a stone thrown off a building. Wind drift at current conditions, 20 inches right. Thermal updraft from the valley floor pushing left, 6 inches. Net drift, 14 right. Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation, 2.5 MOA right. Spin drift, 1.8 MOA right. Air temperature, 112 degrees. Thin air, low density, bullet flies faster, flatter. Adjust elevation down 1 MOA. All of this happened in 3 seconds. Not conscious thought, instinct. 20,000 hours compressed into a single automatic process that bypassed her thinking mind entirely and spoke directly to her hands. She dialed the turrets. Click, click, click. Each adjustment precise, confident. No hesitation, no second-guessing, no rechecking. Behind her, 209 men stood frozen. Some had their mouths open. Some were gripping their own rifles like railings on a sinking ship. Nash Brennan hadn't blinked in 30 seconds. Garrett Kane stood with his arms crossed, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. His lips were moving. No sound came out. But if anyone had been close enough to read them, they would have seen the same 2 words repeated like a prayer. Come on, come on, come on. Kira found her natural respiratory pause, the sacred space between breaths where the body achieves perfect stillness. No heartbeat disruption, no muscular tremor. The space where the rifle and the shooter and the spinning earth become a single, closed system. And everything else, the crowd, the heat, the pressure, the 7 years of silence, falls away like dead leaves. Her finger began its press on the trigger, slow, even. A pressure so gradual that the break would be a surprise even to her. That was the design. If she knew when the shot would fire, she'd flinch. The body would betray her at the last possible moment. So she surrendered control, let the trigger decide. The rifle fired. The sound was different from her M110. Deeper, heavier, a voice instead of a whisper. The recoil drove into her shoulder, firm, authoritative, and she rode it the way a surfer rides a wave. No resistance, no fight, just acceptance. Through the scope, she watched. 4.1 seconds. The longest 4.1 seconds in the lives of every person on that range. The bullet climbed. It left the muzzle at 2,950 feet per second, faster than the speed of sound by nearly 3 times. It climbed through the superheated air, rising along an arc calculated by a woman who'd been doing this math since she was old enough to hold a rifle. At its apex, it was 90 feet above the line of sight. A bullet in the sky, invisible, silent to the target, obeying nothing but physics and the will of the person who'd launched it. Then it began to fall. At 1,700 meters, it went transonic, broke the sound barrier in reverse. The shock wave caused a wobble. A brief, sickening moment where the bullet's stability flickered like a candle in wind. This was where most shots died. This was where the ghost target earned its name. The transonic zone was a graveyard for bullets, a place where imperfections in the round, the barrel, the load, any imperfection at all, got amplified into a miss. But this bullet was hand-loaded by Garrett Kane, a man who'd spent 7 years obsessing over a debt he couldn't repay, a man who loaded every round as if his life depended on it. Because once it had. The bullet was perfect, balanced, concentric to within 1,000th of an inch. It held. Wind caught it, pushed right. A thermal from the valley floor pushed left. The forces wrestled, shoved, negotiated, and nearly canceled each other out. Nearly. Not perfectly, but close enough. Close enough for a shooter who'd calculated the net drift to the inch. 3,200 meters downrange, the 10-inch white steel plate waited, dancing in mirage, a ghost in a furnace. A target that 15 of the best snipers in America had thrown everything they had at and missed. The bullet descended, converged, arrived. A metallic clang rolled across the valley. Not loud, not dramatic, just a sound. A clear, clean, undeniable sound that carried across the desert like a church bell in an empty town. The electronic scoring system spoke in a flat, mechanical voice that didn't know or care about the history it was recording. Target 8, hit, center mass. Time elapsed, 11 minutes, 51 seconds. Silence. Not the silence of surprise, not the silence of a crowd processing what it just saw. This was the silence of a world breaking, the silence of 209 certainties shattering at the same instant, like a window hit by a stone. The cracks spreading outward in every direction at once. 4 seconds. Nobody moved. Then a green beret at the back of the crowd took off his hat, held it against his chest, stared at the ground as if the earth might offer an explanation. A ranger put both hands on top of his head, fingers laced, eyes closed. The posture of a man watching something he cannot believe and cannot deny. A SEAL started laughing. Not joy, shock with sound. The kind of laughter that comes when your brain short circuits and your body has to do something, anything, to release the pressure. Nash Brennan's mouth was open. His face was the color of wet ash. He looked at his $28,000 rifle, then at the ShyTac lying in front of a woman he'd called sweetheart 3 hours ago, then at his rifle again. Something behind his eyes was collapsing. Not his confidence, something deeper. The entire architecture of his identity. The gear, the swagger, the hierarchy, crumbling like a sandcastle hit by a wave. Garrett Kane didn't move, didn't make a sound. Tears poured down his face and he let them. 7 years. 7 years of searching, of begging for information, of lying awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom while his wife slept beside him, wondering if the voice on the radio was real, wondering if he'd imagined her, wondering if the woman who held back an army so he could live was a ghost who existed only in the space between survival and gratitude. She was real. She was right there. And she'd just done the impossible again. Kira remained prone, already clearing the weapon, safed the rifle, removed the cartridge casing. She pocketed it, the brass warm against her palm, locked the bolt back, checked the chamber. The ritual of safety performed with the same precision she'd applied to the shot itself. Automatic, sacred. She sat up, extended the rifle toward Garrett. "Your weapon, Chief." He shook his head. Couldn't speak. Tried again. "Keep it." "I can't do that. It's your rifle." "That rifle just made history, Sergeant Major. It belongs with the person who made it matter." Before Kira could respond, before the crowd could fully react, before the applause that was building in 200 chests could break free, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that don't ask permission. The kind that don't need to. Every head turned. A man was walking across the active firing line. 68 years old, white hair, military cut, weathered face carved from stone, flannel shirt, jeans, hiking boots, no uniform, no rank. But he moved with the absolute unhurried authority of a man who had commanded nothing and answered to no one for longer than most of these shooters had been alive. Two range safety officers moved to intercept. The range was technically still hot. Protocol demanded intervention. The old man raised one hand, a single gesture. The range officer stopped, stepped back, swallowed whatever they were about to say. The crowd parted, not slowly, instantly, the way water parts for a ship's bow. 209 of the most elite soldiers in the United States military pressing backward to clear a path for an old man in civilian clothes who was walking toward a sergeant kneeling in the dirt. He passed Garrett first, stopped. Their eyes met. "Well done, Chief Kane." Garrett's voice was wrecked, barely functional. "I just gave her the right tools, sir. She did the impossible part." Indeed, she did. The old man continued walking. His path took him directly past Nash Brennan. He stopped, looked at the Marine Master Sergeant, said nothing. The silence between them was heavier than a loaded rifle. The old man's eyes held no anger. Something worse, disappointment. The quiet, measured, devastating disappointment of someone who had expected better from a man capable of better and had been let down in the most public way possible. Nash tried to hold the gaze, made it 2 seconds, 3. Then his eyes dropped to the ground. His jaw clenched so hard the muscles in his neck corded like rope. His face flooded with something far beyond embarrassment. Shame. The real kind. The kind that reaches into your chest and rearranges the furniture. The old man held the look for 5 full seconds, then moved on. Didn't need to say a word. The silence had said everything. He stopped in front of Kira. She was already rising, coming to attention. Proper protocol, even though this man wore no rank. Heels together, hands at her sides, chin up. The old man raised his hand. "As you were, Kira." She relaxed, slightly. He turned to face the assembled crowd. His voice, when he spoke, carried across the firing line without amplification. The voice of a man who had commanded thousands and never once needed a microphone. "For 15 years, I've been called too hard, too demanding, unrealistic. They fired me from the United States Army Scout Sniper program because I expected perfection when perfection was inconvenient." Pause. The kind of pause that makes men stop breathing. Some of it was deserved. Most of it was not. Nobody moved. You saw this soldier arrive today. You saw her standard issue rifle. You saw her $45 case. You saw her lack of custom gear. And you made assumptions. You judged the book by its cover. You didn't even bother to read the first page. His eyes swept the crowd, making contact one face at a time. "Let me read it for you." He straightened, full parade ground posture. Every word that followed landed like a hammer on an anvil. "This is Sergeant Major Kira Vale, United States Army, serial number classified, assignment classified." Gasps. Real, physical gasps. The kind that come from the gut, not the throat. 7 years ago, at 20 years old, with 2 years in the Army and no special operations clearance, she saved 11 Navy SEALs from certain death. The shock was visible. Men stepped back as if they'd been shoved. A Delta operator sitting on an ammo crate stood up so fast the crate flipped behind him. She wasn't assigned to that operation. She had no orders, no authorization. She heard men dying on an encrypted channel she wasn't supposed to be monitoring and made a choice that no manual, no regulation, no doctrine covers. She climbed 9,800 feet in 3 hours. In the dark, in sub-zero temperatures, alone. The crowd was no longer a crowd, it was a congregation. For 72 hours, she held that ridge. No food after hour 8, no water after hour 28. Temperature dropped to -15 Celsius, wind chill to -35. She had 60 rounds of ammunition. She fired 29, 27 confirmed kills. He paused. Let the numbers sink in. But that's not the story. The story is what she didn't shoot. The old man's voice changed, quieter, heavier. At hour 54, a Taliban commander used a 13-year-old boy as a human shield. Local shepherd, forced at gunpoint. She had the shot, 1,840 meters. Could have ended the engagement right there. Chief Kane, down in that valley, bleeding, watching his men die, gave her a direct order to take it. Every eye in the crowd found Garrett. He stood perfectly still, tears still falling. The shot had an 18% chance of hitting the boy instead of the commander. Sergeant Major Vale refused the order. She waited. For 40 agonizing minutes, while 11 SEALs bled and fought and prayed, she waited. Until the commander released the boy to drink water. Only then did she take the shot. Clean. Perfect. The boy ran away, unharmed. The old man's voice cracked. Just barely. Just enough to prove that age and experience don't make you bulletproof against the things that actually matter. That is not just skill, that is character. That is the difference between a shooter and a warrior. He looked at Kira, then at Garrett, then at the space between them. The cost was everything. She lost 15 pounds in 72 hours, stage 2 hypothermia, both feet frostbitten, kidney failure, rhabdomyolysis. The doctors said 6 more hours on that mountain would have killed her or caused permanent organ damage. The crowd was silent, the kind of silence that follows revelation. She spent 2 weeks in a military hospital, 3 months recovering from post-traumatic stress, nightmares, insomnia, weight loss, the invisible wounds that don't show up in after-action reports. The old man's voice hardened. And then the United States military classified the entire operation above top secret, erased her from the record, told the 11 men she saved that she didn't exist, ordered them to never speak her name. He let that sit, let them understand what had been taken from her. Chief Petty Officer Garrett Kane spent 7 years searching for her, filing Freedom of Information requests, calling in favors, keeping a notebook of clues and theories, because he wanted to say 2 words, thank you. Garrett's shoulders shook. He didn't try to hide it. The old man turned back to the crowd. My name is August Holloway, call sign, Wraith. I served 42 years. Most of you have never heard of me because I train people who don't exist to do things that never happen. I was fired in 2011 for being too demanding, for expecting my students to value human life more than target scores, for teaching them that the hardest shot is the one you don't take. He pointed at Kira. This woman's father, Dalton Vale, saved my life in 1998. Avalanche in Alaska during a winter warfare training exercise. He pulled me out with a broken back and carried me 4 miles through a blizzard. I owed him everything. His voice softened. Dalton died 3 years ago. Car accident. Before he died, he asked me one thing. Train my daughter. She's got the gift. Don't let them waste it. The old man's eyes were wet now. I lost my own daughter in 1998, same year Dalton saved me. Lily was 27, climbing accident in the Tetons. I wasn't there. I was overseas, training, always training. I never got to say goodbye. He looked at Kira with something that transcended respect, something that looked like love. I told Dalton I couldn't train another woman, couldn't bear to lose another daughter. But Kira didn't give me a choice. She showed up at my cabin every day for 6 months. Wouldn't leave, wouldn't quit, just like her father. He smiled, small, real. She's not my student. She's the daughter I get a second chance with. And today, she proves something I've been trying to teach for 42 years. That excellence isn't about the weapon, it's about the warrior. And the warrior is defined by the choices they make when no one is watching. The old man, August Holloway, Wraith, came to attention. Perfect posture, 68 years of service in every line of his body, and he raised his hands slowly, deliberately, with a precision that spoke of 4 decades of military discipline. He rendered a salute to a non-commissioned officer in front of 209 witnesses. "Sergeant Major Kiera Vale," he said. His voice was steady now, controlled. But beneath the control, something burned. "It is the highest honor of my life to call you my daughter." Kiera's composure cracked. Not much, not dramatically, but enough. Her eyes glistened. Her hand trembled, the slightest vibration visible only to those standing close, as she returned the salute. They held it, teacher and student, father and daughter. Two warriors recognizing each other across a distance that had nothing to do with meters and everything to do with sacrifice. The salutes dropped, and the range exploded. Not applause, a roar. 209 men, Delta operators, SEAL team snipers, Marine raiders, Army Rangers, Green Berets, men who had stared down death and never flinched, screaming, shouting, whistling, clapping with hands that had pulled triggers in combat zones on 4 continents. A Ranger was pounding his fist on an ammo crate. A Green Beret was hugging the Delta operator next to him. 2 men from rival units who probably hadn't said a civil word to each other all week. A SEAL was on one knee, head bowed, one fist pressed against his chest. The noise rolled across the desert like thunder. Nash Brennan stood at the back of the crowd. He was not clapping. He was not shouting. He was staring at his rifle, his $28,000 masterpiece, with the eyes of a man seeing the most important thing in his life for what it actually was. A tool. Just a tool. Expensive, well-made, but meaningless without the kind of will, the kind of sacrifice, the kind of quiet, grinding, invisible excellence that no amount of money could buy. His hands were shaking. Not from anger, not from humiliation, from the weight of understanding something he'd spent 40 years getting wrong. The roar continued. Men pressed forward, wanting to be closer, wanting to shake her hand, wanting to exist in the orbit of something they'd spend the rest of their careers trying to articulate. But Kiera Vale stood perfectly still at position 19, the ShyTac at her feet, a single brass casing in her pocket, tears on her face that she let fall without apology. For the first time since Kunar Province, since a frozen ridge at 9,800 feet, where she'd held back an army and nearly died doing it, Kiera Vale was not invisible, and she had no idea what to do with that. The roar faded, not all at once. It drained slowly, the way floodwater recedes, leaving behind a different landscape than the one it found. August raised one hand. The silence that followed was instant, complete. The obedience of men who understood in their bones that the next words out of this man's mouth would matter. "Today you received a master class," August said, "not in shooting, in humility, in remembering that true excellence doesn't announce itself. It demonstrates." He looked around, making eye contact with every man who had the courage to hold it. "I suggest you learn from it." He turned, walked back toward the observation tower, unhurried, not another word. He didn't need another word. The silence he left behind was louder than anything he could have said. The crowd broke apart slowly, the way ice breaks on a river in spring, reluctantly, in pieces, not sure of the new shape it's supposed to take. Men drifted into small clusters, voices low, heads close together, the conversations all orbiting the same center of gravity. One shot, cold rifle she'd never touched. 3,200 meters, new American record. She wrote the manual, Field Manual 3-2210. She wrote the protocols we studied to get here. 72 hours on a mountain, no food, no water after 32. Who does that? She does. Apparently, she does. At position 19, Kiera was packing her gear, methodical, unhurried. The same steady hands, the same quiet focus, as if the last 20 minutes had been a dream that belonged to someone else. She slid the M110 back into the $45 case, zipped it closed, slung it over her shoulder, reached for the Shytac, hesitated. "I told you," Garrett said. He'd been standing 6 feet away, waiting. Patient. The way you wait for someone who's earned the right to take their time. "It's yours, Chief. That rifle is worth about $8,000. "I know, and it just made the most important shot in the history of American marksmanship." "Exactly. You think I'm going to put it back in my safe and pretend that didn't happen?" Kira looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since he'd knelt beside her on the firing line. The silver in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the weight he carried, 7 years of it, heavy as stone, visible in the set of his shoulders, in the way he held his jaw. "You've been looking for me," she said, not a question. "Every day, every single day for 7 years. I'm sorry." "For what?" "For making you wait. The classification." "Don't." Garrett's voice broke. He caught it, rebuilt it word by word. "Don't you dare apologize to me, Sergeant Major. You saved my life. You saved 11 lives. You almost died doing it. And then you disappeared like it never happened, like you didn't matter. That was the job. That was more than a job, and you know it." Kira was quiet. Her eyes dropped to the brass casing in her hand, the casing from the ghost shot. She turned it between her fingers, warm from the Nevada sun, warm from the rifle, warm from whatever unnamed thing was happening inside her chest. "I have a daughter," Garrett said. "Her name is Sophie. She's 7. She was 6 weeks old when your voice came on that radio. 6 weeks old, and I'd never held her. I was lying behind a wall in Kunar, telling my guys it was going to be okay, knowing it wasn't. Thinking about this tiny pink face in a photo on my phone." His voice cracked again. He let it. "I held her for the first time 3 weeks after you pulled us out. 3 weeks. She was 2 months old, and she grabbed my finger and looked at me like she'd been waiting." He stepped closer. "She exists because of you. My marriage exists because of you. Every Christmas, every birthday, every Tuesday morning when I make her pancakes and she complains that I burn the edges. All of that exists because a woman I'd never met decided that 11 strangers were worth dying for." Kira's composure, the wall she'd built over a lifetime of silence and service and being invisible, cracked deeper than it had on the firing line. Her eyes filled. She blinked. The tears fell. She didn't wipe them. "Tell me her favorite pancake shape," Kira said. Garrett laughed. A broken, wet, beautiful sound. "Dinosaurs, always dinosaurs. She says round pancakes are boring." She's right, they are. They stood there, 2 warriors in the Nevada heat, one who'd spent 7 years searching, one who'd spent 7 years being invisible. The distance between them, measured not in meters but in classification levels and after-action reports, and the particular loneliness of people who do extraordinary things that nobody is allowed to know about, finally, mercifully closed. Garrett extended his hand. Kiara took it. The grip was firm. The hold lasted longer than a handshake, shorter than an embrace. Exactly right. "Dagger 6, she said quietly. "Wraith. You made it home, Chief. All 11 of us, because of you. You held the position. I just bought you time." Garrett shook his head. "You gave us hope when we thought it was over, when every man behind that wall was making peace with dying. Your voice came through that radio and told us to stay low, told us you had it. That hope is the reason 11 men went home to their families." Kira released his hand, picked up the Shytac, held it with both hands, feeling its weight, not the physical weight, the other kind. The kind measured in stories, in sacrifice, in 7-year debts. "I'll take care of it," she said. "I know you will." Then footsteps, different from August, slower, heavier. The footsteps of a man walking towards something he didn't want to face, but couldn't run from. Nash Brennan. The crowd noticed. Conversation stopped mid-word. Every eye tracked Nash as he approached position 19. His face was wrong, the confidence stripped away, the swagger gone, leaving behind something raw and exposed. The face of a man who'd been turned inside out in public and was still trying to figure out which parts to put back. He stopped 6 feet from Kira, opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Tried again. "Sergeant Major, His voice failed. Not from emotion, though emotion was there. From the sheer weight of what he needed to say, and the inadequacy of any words he could find to say it. Kira turned, looked at him. Her expression was neutral. Not cold, not warm. The face of a woman who'd heard every version of doubt and dismissal the world could produce, and had long ago stopped keeping score. "I was arrogant," Nash said. The words came out like rocks being pulled from his throat. "I was arrogant and I was cruel, and I didn't see. Couldn't see past my own ego." "You saw what you expected to see," Kira said. "Most people do. That's not an excuse." "No, it's not." Nash looked at the ground, then at his hands, then at the woman standing in front of him. "I've been the best shooter in every room I've walked into for 15 years. That became my identity. The gear, the reputation, the scores. I built my whole life around being that guy." He paused, struggled to find the next words. "And when I saw you with that M110 in that soft case, I didn't see a shooter. I saw a threat to everything I'd built. So I tried to make you small. Because if you were small, I could stay big." The honesty of it hit the surrounding crowd like a physical force. Men who'd been listening shifted uncomfortably. Some of them had laughed along with Nash that morning. Some of them had called her somebody's kid sister. The shame wasn't just Nash's. It was collective. Kira studied him, the way she studied wind, reading the movements, the patterns, the truth beneath the surface. "You're a hell of a shooter, Brennan," she said. 7 for 7 is no joke. Nobody on this range should take that away from you. 7 for 7 doesn't mean much when someone does 8 for 8 with a borrowed rifle and 1 bullet. It means you can hit what you aim at under pressure. That's not nothing. That's everything." She extended her hand. "You just forgot something. The gear doesn't make the warrior. The warrior makes the gear matter." Nash gripped her hand, hard. The grip of a man holding onto a lifeline. "Yes, ma'am. You know what the difference is between 7 and 8, Brennan?" "Ma'am? It's not the rifle. It's not the caliber. It's not the $28,000. The difference is that I've failed more times than you've tried. I've missed shots that should have hit. I've frozen on triggers. I've blown calculations that a first-year student would have caught. Every single failure taught me something your success never could." Nash's eyes widened. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected the woman he'd mocked to stand here and hand him the most valuable lesson of his career, with the same calm she'd used to dismantle his ego. "Failure is the tuition," Kira said. "Excellence is the degree. You don't get one without paying the other." She released his hand. "Now go teach someone else that lesson. You've got the platform. Use it." Nash stood there for a moment, processing. The crowd watched a man being rebuilt in real time. The old architecture of ego and swagger being demolished, replaced by something quieter, stronger, built on different foundations. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I will." He turned, walked back toward his firing position. But his walk was different now. The strut was gone. In its place, something more grounded, more honest. The walk of a man who just learned at 40 years old that the most important battle he'd ever fight was against himself. The afternoon ground on. The heat didn't break, but something else had broken. And the range felt different now. The hierarchies that had been so solid that morning, the pecking order based on gear and patches and deployment count, had been scrambled beyond repair. Men who hadn't spoken to each other all week were sharing water and trading wind data. Rivalries that had seemed important at breakfast seemed absurd by lunch. Kira spent the next hour doing something nobody expected. She walked the firing line, not as a celebrity, not as a legend accepting praise, as a teacher. She stopped at position 7, where a young Army corporal was struggling with his wind calls. She knelt beside him, watched him shoot, said nothing for a full minute. Then, "You're reading the Mirage backward." The corporal looked at her, eyes wide. "Sergeant Major? The waves are moving right, but you're correcting right. That means you think the wind is pushing your bullet right. It's not. Mirage moves in the direction the wind is coming from, not the direction it's going. Correct left." The corporal stared at her. "Sergeant Major, I've been reading Mirage for 3 years. Correct left. Trust me." He corrected left. Fired. Hit the target dead center. "How did you?" "I made that same mistake for 3 months when I was 19. Cost me a qualification. Spent the next 6 months learning Mirage until I could read it in my sleep." She moved to position 12. A Marine staff sergeant was having trouble with his trigger press. She watched 2 shots, both pulled right. "You're anticipating the break. Your brain knows the shot is coming, so your shoulder tenses a quarter second before the trigger releases. That tension pushes the muzzle right." "I've been fighting that for years, Sergeant Major." "Stop fighting it. Fighting creates tension. Instead, make the trigger press so slow that you can't predict when it breaks. Take your conscious mind out of the equation. Let the shot surprise you." He tried. The next round hit center. That felt completely different. That's because it was. That was your body shooting instead of your brain. Your body knows what to do. Your brain just gets in the way. She moved down the line, position after position, quiet corrections, gentle adjustments, never condescending, never impatient, meeting each shooter where they were and lifting them 1 degree at a time toward something better. Garrett watched from a distance. He'd seen this before. Not from Kira, from the great instructors he trained under. The rare ones who could see what was wrong in a single shot and fix it with a single sentence. The ones who taught not by showing off their own skill, but by unlocking the skill already inside their students. She's not just a shooter, he thought. She's a builder. By late afternoon, a line had formed at position 19. Shooters waiting for 5 minutes with the Ghost Shots creator. Not for autographs, not for photos, for knowledge. A Delta operator wanted help with his cold bore first-round accuracy. A Green Beret needed to understand altitude compensation above 8,000 feet. A Ranger had questions about wind drift in urban canyons. Kiera answered every question, corrected every shooter who asked, gave away knowledge that had taken her 15 years and 450,000 rounds to accumulate. Nash Brennan watched from his position. His rifle was packed. His gear was stowed. He wasn't shooting anymore. He was sitting on his shooting mat, watching Kira teach, and writing in a notebook he'd bought from the range store an hour ago. "What are you writing?" one of his Marines asked. "Everything she says. Every correction. Every technique." "Why?" Nash looked up. His eyes were clear. The arrogance was gone. In its place, something that looked almost like peace. "Because I'm going to teach this. All of it. I'm going to take what she's giving away today and make sure it reaches every sniper I ever train." "That's not really your style, Master Sergeant." "No, it wasn't. It is now." The sun began its descent. The shadows lengthened. The heat broke. Not much, but enough to remind the men on the range that even the desert has mercy sometimes. At position 19, a young woman waited. 22 years old. Red hair pulled back in a braid. Green eyes that carried doubt the way some people carry scars. Private First Class Bryn Fletcher, Army, second day at Blackridge, first major competition. Kiera finished with a SEAL Team 6 operator and turned. Saw Bryn standing there, hands clasped in front of her, not quite at attention, not quite at ease. The posture of someone trying to be invisible while desperately wanting to be seen. "Private Fletcher," Kira said. Not a question. She'd seen the roster that morning. "Sergeant Major," Bryn's voice was small, uncertain. I don't want to waste your time. You're not wasting my time. What do you need? Bryn stopped, started again. People keep saying I don't belong here, that women can't shoot distance, that I'm taking a slot from someone who deserves it. Kira knelt, not to condescend, to connect, eye to eye, equal to equal. Look at me, Fletcher. Bryn looked up, green eyes meeting gray-blue. You hear that ringing right now? High-pitched. In your left ear? Bryn blinked. Yes, it's been driving me crazy all day. That's not annoying, that's data. Close your eyes. Sergeant Major? Close your eyes. Listen to the ringing. What frequency? Bryn closed her eyes, concentrated. The firing line noise faded into background. The ringing came forward. Not annoying now, musical. Like a single note held by an orchestra tuning before a performance. 50-something, maybe 51? Kira smiled. First real smile anyone had seen from her all day. 51.4 hertz. You have the gift. Bryn's eyes opened. The gift? Most people hear that frequency as noise. They filter it out, ignore it. But some people, very few people, can isolate it, hold it, use it to measure wind speed and direction without instruments. It's how I read wind. It's how August taught me. It's how his father taught him in 1968. You're saying I can? I'm saying you already do. You just didn't know what it was. Kira stood. Now I'm going to teach you two things, how to use it and when not to. For the next 90 minutes, Kira worked with Bryn, not just mechanics, ethics. Before every shot, Kira said, you ask two questions. Can I make this shot? And should I make this shot? The first question is about skill. The second is about character. You need both. They worked on a 1,500-meter target. Bryn's first attempt missed by 8 feet. Her face crumbled. Don't apologize, Kira said. Never apologize for a miss. A miss is data. Where did your round go? Left, maybe 8 feet. So what's your correction? 3 minutes, right? 2.5. Your instinct was right the first time. Trust it. Bryn adjusted. Fired. Closer. 3 feet left. Better. Again. Third shot. The steel rang. Clear. Undeniable. Bryn sat up, eyes enormous. Disbelief and joy colliding on her face like two waves meeting in open water. Kira smiled. Welcome to the profession, Fletcher. Sergeant Major, I don't know how to thank. You don't thank me, you pass it on. When you're where I am someday, you find the young woman everyone's doubting and you teach her. That's how you thank me. Bryn nodded, couldn't speak, could only nod. The crowd that had gathered to watch applauded. Not the mocking applause from that morning, respectful, genuine, the applause of men who just watched something rare, the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. No ego, no gatekeeping, just teaching. Garrett approached as the crowd dispersed. You're good at this. At what? Building people. You made that girl believe in herself in 90 minutes. I've seen instructors spend 6 months and not accomplish that. I just showed her what she already had. She did the rest. That's what good teachers do. Kira packed her gear. The M110 in its soft case. The ShyTac, Garrett's gift, in a hard case that Garrett had pressed into her hands 20 minutes ago. Her notebook, her day pack, the brass casing from the ghost shot, wrapped in cloth and placed carefully in a side pocket. What happens now? Garrett asked. I go home. Where's home? Wyoming, the mountains, where it's quiet. August's place? He left it to me, in his will, 3 years ago, before my father died. He said if anything happened to him, I should have it. Said it needed someone who understood silence. Garrett was quiet for a moment. He knew he was dying? No, he just knew he was old, and that old men who live alone in the mountains don't always get found in time. She looked at Garrett. He wanted to make sure the cabin went to someone who'd use it, who'd keep teaching there. Are you? Teaching? 12 students a year, all private, no military affiliation. I pick them myself. How? They find me, just like I found August. The ones who need it badly enough figure out where to look. Garrett smiled. August would be proud. He was proud, he told me. 3 days before he died, said I'd become what he couldn't. Not the perfect shot, the perfect choice. She picked up the cases, started walking toward the parking lot. Garrett fell in beside her. Sophie's birthday is in October, Garrett said. Dinosaur pancakes. You should come. Kira stopped walking, looked at him. This man who'd spent 7 years searching, driven by a gratitude so deep it had become the organizing principle of his life. Dinosaur pancakes, she repeated. She's very particular about the shapes. The Triceratops has to have 3 horns. She counts. Kira almost smiled. Not quite, but closer than she'd been in years. Send me the address, Chief. I'll be there. I will. She got in the truck, turned the key. The engine caught with the reliable, unglamorous sound of a vehicle that had never tried to impress anyone. She pulled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, she could see Garrett standing where she'd left him. One hand raised, not waving, saluting. She drove. The desert stretched ahead, vast and empty and utterly indifferent to the history that had been made on its surface that day. On the passenger seat, the brass casing from the ghost shot caught the last light of the sun and glowed like a tiny ember. 14 months later, 3 weeks before August Holloway died, a letter arrived at the cabin. Official seal, Department of Defense, the kind of envelope that makes your hands shake before you even open it. Kira stood in the kitchen, holding it. Through the window, she could see August in his workshop, hunched over an old rifle scope, doing the repair work that kept his hands steady and his mind sharp. She opened the envelope. Sergeant Major Kira Vale, Presidential Unit Citation, Operation Phantom Ridge, Kunar Province, Afghanistan, 2019. Declassified by Executive Order 14-7729. The President of the United States requests your presence at a recognition ceremony. The White House, December 15, 2027. Kira read it 3 times. 7 years. 7 years of being erased from every record, every report, every acknowledgement. Garrett had submitted 47 Medal of Honor recommendations, all denied. All stamped, classified, access denied. And now they wanted to give her a medal in front of cameras. She walked to the workshop. August looked up from the scope, saw her face, and set down his tools. They declassified it, she said, handed him the letter. August read it slowly, set it down on the workbench, looked at her with eyes that had seen 42 years of this game. The politics, the cover-ups, the delayed recognitions that came too late to matter. You going? I don't know. What would your father say? Kira was quiet. Outside, a hawk circled over the valley, hunting, patient, waiting for the right moment. He'd say medals don't define the warrior. And what would I say? She almost smiled. You'd say the same thing. August stood, walked to her, put both hands on her shoulders. The grip was firm, steady, the way a father holds a daughter before saying something that will hurt, but needs to be said anyway. Kid, I need to tell you something. My heart's giving out. Doctor says I've got maybe 3-4 months. Could be less. Could be tomorrow. The words hit her like a bullet she didn't see coming. August, let me finish. His voice was gentle, final. I'm not going to that ceremony. I won't be here. But you need to go. Not for the medal. Not for the recognition. For the 11 men. For Garrett. For Sophie. For every student who'll come after you and need to know that doing the right thing gets acknowledged eventually, even if it takes 7 years. I don't want recognition. You want to stay invisible, I know, but you don't get to anymore. That's the price of teaching, kid. You have to be visible so they can see what right looks like. Somebody's got to stand up there and prove that integrity matters, that the choice matters, that waiting for the boy to be safe was worth more than following orders. Kira's eyes filled. I don't know how to be visible. August smiled, the same small, tight smile he'd given her 5 years ago when she'd shown up at his cabin for the 100th time and he'd finally opened the door. Yes, you do. You just did it at Blackridge. You stood in front of 200 men and taught them that the weapon doesn't matter. You'll do it again at the White House, and then you'll come home and keep teaching. Because visibility isn't about glory, kid. It's about responsibility. He pulled her into a hug, the first real hug he'd given her in 5 years. She felt how thin he'd become, how fragile. The man who'd seemed carved from granite was made of flesh and bone and time, like everyone else. I'm proud of you, he whispered. Your father would be too. Now go get that damn medal so I can die knowing they finally got one thing right. She held him. I love you, August. His breath caught, just for a second. Then, I love you too, kid. You're the daughter I got a second chance with. Don't waste that. Don't hide. Teach them. Show them. Be visible. 3 weeks later, August Holloway died in his sleep, the way he'd always said he wanted to go. No pain, no hospitals, just the mountains and the silence, and the wind moving through the valley at 52 hertz. December 15th, 2027, the White House, East Room. Kira stood in a receiving line wearing her dress uniform. The 3 chevrons had been replaced with the proper rank, Sergeant Major, E9. 7 years late, but there. Garrett stood beside her, full dress blues, silver hair combed back, medals on his chest that told stories he'd never speak about in public. Next to him, Sophie, 8 years old now, navy blue dress, hair in careful braids, holding a photograph of August Holloway in a small silver frame. Nash Brennan sat in the 3rd row. He'd brought 12 of his students, all women, all Marines, all trained in Kira's methods. They sat at attention, backs straight, eyes forward, understanding they were witnessing history. Bryn Fletcher stood against the back wall, recording everything on a camera. Not for herself, for the students back at the Institute who needed to see this, who needed to know that doing the right thing, even when it cost everything, eventually got recognized. The president entered. The room rose. The citation was read aloud. Every word, the unauthorized deployment, the 72-hour siege, the 29 rounds fired, the 27 confirmed kills, the 40-minute wait, the 13-year-old boy who lived because someone chose integrity over orders. When they reached that part, Sophie squeezed Kira's hand. The president stepped forward, placed the presidential unit citation around Kira's neck. The medal was heavier than she'd expected. Not the physical weight, the other kind. Sergeant Major Vale, the president said, cameras flashing. Your actions on that ridge represent the highest ideals of military service. Courage, sacrifice, and the moral clarity to know when not to pull the trigger. That last part, that's what makes you extraordinary. Thank you for your service. Thank you for waiting. Kira looked at the medal, then at Garrett, then at Sophie. This is for your grandfather, she whispered to Sophie, and for the man who taught me what your grandfather started. Sophie held up the photograph of August. I'll tell everyone about them. I promise. Every student who comes to the Institute, every person who asks, I'll make sure they remember. That was the real award, not the medal and ribbon around her neck. The promise that the story would continue, that August and Dalton wouldn't be forgotten. Of place among the limousines, and town of place among the limousines and town cars. You did good in there, he said. August made me promise. He was right too. Garrett handed her an envelope. From all of us, the 11. We've been working on this for 7 years. It finally went through last month. Kira opened it. Inside, a photograph. 11 men. SEAL team reunion. all of them holding a sign made from a bedsheet. Still here because of Wraith. Below the photo, handwritten notes from each man. Santos, my son is 5, named him after my favorite superhero. Miller, opened a coffee shop in Portland, first responders drink free, because I remember what it's like to need saving. Patterson, teaching high school now, telling them the story every year, the one about the woman who waited. Kira's vision blurred. We tried to find you for 7 years, Garrett said. We all did, every one of us. And when we finally did, when I saw you at Blackridge, I knew I'd found something I'd been looking for my whole life. Not just the person who saved me, the person who showed me what right looks like. Garrett, Sophie wants to intern at the Institute when she's 16. I told her she has to fill the notebook first. She's on page 53. She's writing about you, about August, about how doing the right thing is harder than doing the easy thing. She gets it, Kira, because you showed her. Kira looked at the photograph again. 11 faces, 11 families, 11 futures that existed because she'd climbed a mountain in the dark and made a choice. Tell her she can come at 16, Kira said, but she has to understand the cost. I'll teach her everything August taught me, how to shoot, how to choose, how to live with both. That's all I want for her, to learn from someone who knows what matters. Kira got in the truck. Garrett leaned in through the window. One more thing. The boy, the 13-year-old, we found him. Kira's breath stopped. His name is Rashid Ahmadi. He's 20 now, medical student, Kabul University. He wants to meet you, wants to say thank you. I've got his contact information if you... Yes, the word came out before she could think. Yes, I need to meet him. Garrett smiled. I thought you might. I'll set it up. She drove away from Washington, back toward the mountains, back toward the work. But something had shifted. The invisibility was gone. The silence was broken. And for the first time in 7 years, Kira understood what August had been trying to tell her. Visibility wasn't about glory. It was about responsibility, about standing up so others could see the path, about being the proof that doing the right thing, even when it cost everything, was possible. Mountain Cemetery, Wyoming, early September, the aspens turning gold. 200 people gathered on a hillside that overlooked a valley August Holloway had loved for 40 years. Military and civilian mixed together, uniforms and flannel shirts. Generations of students come to pay respects to a teacher who'd changed their lives. August Wraith Holloway died peacefully in his sleep, age 69. No pain, no warning, just didn't wake up one morning, the way he'd always said he wanted to go. Kira stood at the front, black dress, simple, the presidential unit citation pinned above her heart. August had asked her to wear it. Let them see it, he'd said. Let them know that the system eventually gets things right. She delivered the eulogy, her voice steady, clear, carrying across the hillside without amplification. August Holloway taught me 3 things: how to shoot, how to choose, how to live with both. She paused. Let the wind carry her words. My father started those lessons when I was 8 years old, on a ranch in Wyoming with a rifle that cost less than most of you spend on optics. He taught me that shooting was sacred, that every round mattered, that excellence wasn't about the weapon. When my father died 3 years ago, I was lost. I just left the Army, discharged for doing something that saved lives but broke rules. I was broken, angry, didn't know who I was anymore. August took me in, not because he wanted to, because I wouldn't leave. I showed up at his cabin every day for 6 months. He finally opened the door and said, "You know what it costs?" I said, "I already paid it once. I can pay it again." Someone in the crowd, a SEAL in his 50s, laughed quietly. Recognition. He'd probably done the same thing once. August left the Army Scout Sniper program in 2011, not by choice, but because he refused to compromise on what mattered. He expected exactly what warriors should expect from themselves: perfection in skill, integrity in character, the wisdom to know when not to pull the trigger. Kira's voice wavered, just slightly. He lost his daughter Lily 28 years ago. Climbing accident. He wasn't there. He was overseas. Training. Always training. He carried that guilt every day of his life. He saw Lily in every woman he taught, tried to give them what he couldn't give her. A father who stayed, who taught them, who was proud of them. She looked down at the casket. Simple pine, no flag. August had requested no military honors, said he'd had enough ceremony in 42 years. 3 days before he died, August told me something. We were sitting on his porch, watching the sunset. He said, "Kid, you became what I couldn't. Not the perfect shot, the perfect choice. You chose the boy over the mission. You chose integrity over orders. That's not something you can teach. That's something you are." Her voice broke. She let it. He said, "I lost Lily because I chose the mission. Always the mission. You didn't make that mistake. Thank you for showing this old man that there's another way." Tears fell. She didn't wipe them. "August, you were the father I needed when mine was gone. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for teaching me that excellence demands everything, and some prices are worth paying." She stepped back. Garrett moved forward, placed a challenge coin on the casket. The coin was custom, matte black. On one side, a sniper's silhouette against a mountain ridge. On the other, 3 words stamped in silver: quiet, competent, deadly. One by one, others came forward. Students spanning 4 decades, each placed something: a coin, a patch, a photo, a round of ammunition. Small offerings from people whose lives had been changed by an old man who refused to compromise. Nash Brennan stepped forward, placed a notebook, the one he'd been writing in at Blackridge. "Everything you taught her, she taught me. I've trained 47 snipers this year using your methods. 12 of them are women. Every single one passed. Every single one knows your story. I'll keep teaching it, I swear." Bryn Fletcher. A round from her first successful 1,500-meter shot. "You gave me permission to believe. Through her. I'm an instructor now, teaching the next generation. Your legacy continues. Thank you." Sophie Kane, 8 years old, walked forward alone, placed a notebook beside the offerings. Her notebook, the one Kira had given her at her birthday party, the one she'd filled with observations about the world. "Mr. Holloway," Sophie said to the casket, her voice small but clear, "I never met you, but Miss Kira tells me stories about how you taught her, about how you waited for her to be ready, about how you saw your daughter in her. I'm going to the Institute when I'm 16. I'm going to learn everything you taught her, and then I'm going to teach others, because that's what we do. We pass it on. Thank you for saving my dad. Thank you for teaching Miss Kira. Thank you for showing us all what right looks like." She stepped back, Garrett's hand on her shoulder, his face wet with tears he didn't try to hide. 20 more, 30, 40, until the casket was covered in offerings, a mountain of gratitude from people who understood that what August had given them couldn't be measured in currency or rank or medals. At the graveside, after everyone else had left, Kira stood alone. She reached into her pocket, pulled out 2 items. The first, her father's dog tags, Dalton Vale, Army Ranger. She placed them carefully on the fresh earth. "Dad, you'd be proud. He finished what you started." The second, the brass casing from the ghost shot, wrapped in cloth. She held it for a long moment, then placed it beside the dog tags. "This was your lesson, August. Not just the shot, the choice. I'll keep teaching it, I promise." She stood, turned to leave, stopped. A man was watching from 50 yards away, standing beside a truck. Next to him, an 8-year-old girl. Red hair and braids, green eyes. She held a notebook, was measuring wind with a blade of grass. Old school, the way August had taught, the way Kira taught. The man raised his hand, not a wave. Acknowledgement. He was teaching his daughter, passing it on, the cycle continuing. Kira nodded. The work would never end, and that was exactly how it should be. 6 months later, spring, the cabin in Wyoming. The sign at the end of the long driveway was simple. Burned wood, hand-carved letters. Holloway Institute, private instruction, by invitation only. Inside the cabin, Kira sat at August's desk, now her desk, his notebook open in front of her. The last page, his handwriting. The final entry he'd made 3 days before he died. Kira, you became what I couldn't. Not just the shot, but the choice. My Lily would have been 55 now. I see her in you every day. Her strength, her heart, her refusal to compromise. Thank you for letting a broken old man be a father again. The price of excellence is everything. You paid it. You earned it. Now you teach them. Skill without character is violence. Character without skill is wasted. The weapon doesn't matter. The warrior does. Wraith. Kira closed the book, looked at the wall, photos covering every inch. Her at 8 with Dalton, both smiling, rifle between them. Lily Holloway, 1985, age 27, climbing gear, bright smile, so much like August. Bryn's first long-range hit, Kira coaching, both grinning. Sophie holding her notebook at the funeral. And new, a photo of Kira at the White House, the presidential unit citation around her neck. Garrett and Sophie on either side. She'd written a caption in the margin. Her handwriting, neat, precise. The handwriting of someone who'd spent a lifetime recording data. Family isn't blood. It's who stays when excellence demands everything. A knock at the door. Kira checked her watch. 6 in the morning, right on time. She opened the door. 3 people stood on the porch. 2 women, 1 man, early 20s, nervous, hopeful. They'd found her, driven through the night, the way she'd driven to find August 5 years ago. Mr. Holloway? The first woman asked, then caught herself. I mean, Kira, just Kira. She looked at them, saw the shadows under their eyes, the weight they carried, the determination. You understand what it costs? They nodded. And you're willing to pay it? Yes, ma'am. She stepped aside. Then come in. We start in 30 minutes. Range is behind the cabin. 1,500 meters. We'll work up from there. They filed in, grateful, scared, ready. Kira watched them settle around the table where August had taught her, where she'd sat for 5 years, absorbing everything he knew, everything he'd learned in 42 years of teaching people how to carry the weight of taking human life. She picked up a notebook, fresh, blank pages, handed it to the first woman, then to the other 2. First lesson, Kira said, you don't learn to shoot first. You learn why you shoot. And more importantly, when you don't. We'll spend the first month on that. No rifle, no range, just ethics, just choice. If you're here to become a better killer, leave now. If you're here to become a better human who happens to be able to shoot, stay. None of them moved. Good. We start with Kunar Province, 2019. 11 men, 1 woman, 72 hours. And a 13-year-old boy who didn't die because someone chose integrity over orders. She told them the story, all of it. The unauthorized deployment, the climb, the cold, the hunger, the hallucinations. Her mother's voice telling her to stop. The commander using the boy as a shield. Garrett's order to take the shot. Her refusal. The 40-minute wait. The clean shot. The price. That's the standard, she said when she finished. Not the shot, the choice. That's what defines us. The 3 students listened, rapt, understanding that they'd found something rare, a teacher who measured success not in target scores, but in the weight of decisions made when no one was watching. Over the next 6 months, Kira taught them everything August had taught her: ballistics, wind reading, mirage interpretation, range estimation. But always, she came back to the choice. Bryn Fletcher joined as assistant instructor. She'd left the Army, taken a job as a private contractor just so she could spend 6 months a year at the Institute, teaching alongside Kira, passing on what had been passed to her. "Why do you think women make better snipers?" one of the male students asked one day. Bryn looked at Kira. Kira nodded. "Your question to answer." "We don't," Bryn said, "but we've learned to prove ourselves where men are assumed capable. That extra burden, it teaches us not to waste shots. Every round has to count. Every decision has to be right. We don't get second chances the way you do, so we get better at making first chances count." The student nodded, understanding. That was a lesson too. In October, Kira drove to Virginia, Garrett's house, Sophie's 8th birthday party, dinosaur everything, decorations, cake, balloons shaped like T-Rexes and Triceratops. Sophie ran up when Kira arrived, 8 years old now. Garrett's eyes, his wife's smile, holding her notebook, now on its 2nd volume. "Miss Vale, I wrote about the funeral, about Mr. Holloway, about the boy you saved. Can I read it to you?" "Sophie," Garrett said, warning in his voice. Kira laughed. "Later, after cake. Right now I have something for you." She handed Sophie a small box, wrapped in plain brown paper. Sophie tore it open. Inside, a challenge coin, matte black, the same design as the one Garrett had placed on August's casket. Quiet, competent, deadly. "That was Mr. Holloway's," Kira said. "He gave it to me when I finished training. Now I'm giving it to you, not because you've earned it yet, because you will. When you're 16, when you come to the Institute, when you learn what he taught me. Keep it until then. Let it remind you what you're working toward." Sophie held the coin like it was made of gold. "I won't let you down, I promise." "I know you won't." Garrett walked Kira to her truck when the party wound down. "Thank you for that, for seeing something in her. I see August in her, and your father, and every student who's ever shown up scared and determined. She'll be good, better than good." "I know." Garrett pulled an envelope from his pocket. "One more thing. It came through last week. Thought you should see it." Kira opened the envelope. Inside, a letter. Department of Defense letterhead. "Medal of Honor recommendation approved. Ceremony scheduled for March 2028. Congressional Medal, the highest honor, for the 40-minute wait, for choosing the boy. They're calling it the most significant act of moral courage in modern military history." Kira stared at the letter. "Garrett, you don't have to go, but August would want you to. Not for you, for everyone who needs to see that doing the right thing matters, that waiting matters, that the choice is worth more than the shot." She folded the letter, put it in her pocket. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." He handed her another envelope. "This one's personal. From Rashid, the boy. He wrote it himself. Wanted you to have it before the ceremony." Kira's hands shook as she opened it. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, English as a second language but clear. "Dear Miss Kira, my name is Rashid Ahmadi. I am 20 years old. I study medicine at Kabul University. I will graduate in 2 years. I want to be a trauma surgeon. I want to save lives the way you saved mine. When I was 13, a Taliban commander used me as a shield. I was so scared. I thought I would die. I heard the radio, a man shouting, telling someone to take the shot, telling them it was an order. I closed my eyes. I prayed. The shot did not come. For 40 minutes I stood there, the commander holding me, his gun against my head, waiting to die. and the shot did not come. When he released me to drink water, I ran. 10 steps, that's all I took. Then I heard it, the rifle. The commander fell. I lived. For 7 years, I did not know who waited, who chose my life over the mission. My father said it was an American sniper, a woman, someone who refused an order because killing me was wrong. I am alive because of her, because of you. I am in medical school because of you. I will save lives because of you. I will teach others to value life because you showed me that my life had value. If you ever come to Kabul, I would be honored to meet you, to say thank you, to show you that the 40 minutes you waited, they mattered. They created a doctor, a healer, a man who will spend his life proving that your choice was right. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for seeing me as a boy, not a target. Thank you for valuing my life when it would have been easier to follow orders. I will never forget, and I will make sure others never forget either. With deepest gratitude and respect, Dr. Rashid Ahmadi, Future. Kira read it twice, then a third time. Her vision blurred. She folded the letter carefully, placed it in her pocket next to the Medal of Honor notification. He wants to meet you, Garrett said. After he graduates, he's planning to come to the States, wants to see the mountains where you train, wants to meet August's grave, wants to thank you in person. Yes, Kira said, her voice thick. Yes, tell him yes. Tell him, she stopped, started again. Tell him the 40 minutes were the easiest decision I ever made, because some things matter more than missions, and he mattered. Garrett smiled. I will. She got in the truck, started the engine. See you next year, Chief. Same time. I'll make the dinosaur pancakes. She drove away, back to Wyoming, back to the mountains, back to the cabin where 12 new students would arrive in 3 weeks. Back to the work of teaching people that the hardest shots are the ones you don't take. At the cabin that night, Kira walked to the range behind the house. 3,200 meters. The target she'd set up 6 months ago, the same distance as the ghost shot. She loaded one round into the Shytac, went prone, closed her eyes. Mom, Dad, August, Rashid, this one's for all of you. She listened, not just with her ears, with everything. The wind frequency, 52.1 hertz, perfect conditions. The way the air moved through the valley, the way the earth felt beneath her body, the way the rifle became an extension of her intention. Natural pause, the space between breaths where the universe holds still. Press, the rifle cracked. The sound echoed across the valley, rolled through the mountains, came back to her like a benediction. 4 seconds of silence. She didn't watch through the scope. She listened. The wind, the bullet's passage, the inevitable conclusion. Clang. Perfect center hit. Kira opened her eyes, smiled. Small. Real. The smile of someone who'd paid the price for excellence and found it was worth it. Still got it, she whispered. She stood, safed the rifle, walked back to the cabin. Tomorrow there would be students, questions, lessons, the endless work of teaching people to be better than they thought they could be. But tonight, there was just this: the mountains, the silence, the knowledge that somewhere, a 20-year-old man was studying medicine because she'd waited 40 minutes. That 11 men had gone home to their families. That Sophie Kane would grow up with a father and learn what mattered. That Bryn Fletcher was teaching others. That Nash Brennan was telling the story to every class he taught. She opened her laptop. One new email. Subject, from SEAL Team 3. She opened it. A photo. 11 men at a reunion, all holding the same sign, still here because of Wraith. Below it, a message from Garrett. Medal of Honor ceremony is March 15th. We'll all be there, every one of us, bringing our families, our kids, everyone who exists because you chose to wait. See you there, Wraith. Dagger 6. Another email. Subject, Master Sergeant Brennan. Sergeant Major, trained 68 students this year using your methods. 23 of them are women. Every single one passed. Every single one knows your story. They know about the boy. They know about the weight. They know that the choice is what defines us. Thank you for teaching me that. I'm passing it on. Forever. Nash. A third email arrived as she watched. Subject: Salam from Kabul. Her breath caught. She opened it. Miss Kiera, I passed my final examinations. I am officially Dr. Rashid Ahmadi now. I start my residency in trauma surgery next month. I will save lives, because you saved mine. I am coming to America in June. I would be deeply honored to visit the Institute, to meet you, to say thank you in person, and to place flowers on Mr. Holloway's grave, because my father says that the teacher of teachers deserves to be remembered. I will see you soon. With gratitude always, Dr. Rashid Ahmadi. Kira read it 3 times, then a 4th. Tears fell freely now. She didn't wipe them. She stood, walked outside, looked up at the stars above the Wyoming mountains. August, she whispered, Dad, we did it. The boy lived, and he's saving others now. The choice mattered. The wait was worth it. The wind answered. 52 hertz, perfect and constant, the frequency of truth. Excellence didn't just exist, it multiplied. She walked back inside, sat at the desk, opened August's notebook one more time. The last page, his final words. The weapon doesn't matter, the warrior does. She picked up a pen, wrote below his words in her own handwriting. August taught me this. I taught others. They will teach more. The lesson continues. The choice defines us. The weight matters. Excellence demands everything, and some prices are worth paying. The work never ends, and that's exactly how it should be. K. She closed the notebook, placed it on the shelf next to her father's dog tags, the ghost shot casing, and the presidential unit citation. Tomorrow, 3 new students would arrive, nervous, hopeful, ready to learn. She would teach them what August taught her, what her father started, what she would pass on until there were no students left to teach. That the measure of a warrior isn't the shots they take, it's the shots they refuse. That family isn't blood, it's who stays when the cost is high and the reward is invisible. That quiet competence will always triumph over loud arrogance. That skill without character is just violence. Character without skill is wasted. That the weapon is just a tool. The warrior is what matters. The light in the cabin window burned late into the night. Inside, Kira prepared tomorrow's lessons. Outside, the wind moved through the valley at 52 hertz. Constant, reliable. The sound of a world that kept turning, that kept offering chances to be better, to choose better, to teach better. And in the darkness of the Wyoming mountains, where legends are born from sacrifice and silence, Kira Vale prepared to build the future. One student at a time, one choice at a time, one shot at a time. The way August had built her, the way she would build them, the way the work continues, forever.